So in terms of commercially available chain rings, who's making the fastest setup at the moment, and what is that ratio look like on a road bike? So, I would have been coming from traditional 53-39 on the road, and now it's a 48-35 with a 10 on the back. Those sort of ratios that are going to allow me to be competitive in road races, have enough gears to climb and sprint and line outs. What would you be riding right now on my factor?
I mean, personally, and having worked with SRAM for years, I love everybody over there. But I mean, man, those folks at Shimano just continue to kill it in these efficiency departments. So, the Dura-Ace chain continues to be more or less the fastest chain you can buy. And a little bit back to your opening, if you have an inexpensive bike that you're trying to maximize efficiency on, there's not a ton of difference between a 105 cassette and chainring, but you can probably save 2 watts by going to a Dura-Ace chain, and they're not that expensive. But, the Dura-Ace chain is on average probably 3/4 to a watt faster than the top chain of the other brands. It's just it's a fast chain. So, I would look at that. And then, gosh, for gravel racing, I'm not a huge off the top of my head gearing chart guy, but I would go as big as you can get. I mean, if you could get a 12, a cassette in the back that starts with a 12 and then work your chain rings to go with that. I mean, you look at what we're doing with a lot of the pro peloton. I mean, the teams that we work with, half a dozen. I mean, if you look at them, they're running 60 tooth chain rings in road stages in some of these cases. And, I think a lot of the guys are running, 50, 56, 42. I mean, it's as big as we can get the companies to give us. And then that just lets them run larger cogs in the back. And I mean, hell, for time trialing, I've got a couple of athletes on like 64 and 66 tooth chain rings for time trialing, and the other thing there, thinking about the cross chaining, particularly in a time trial type situation, if it's relatively flat, we will custom build a cassette to get whatever that kind of sweet spot, 1 or 2 cogs right in the middle, so that you're having minimal chain angle coming off of that huge ring in the back, because it's watts, right? It's all watts.
And so moving on to tires and wheels. So I'm running the Black Ink 45 wheels as standard on my factor. They did come as stock with a 28 mil Goodyear tire on it. I changed that over to a 28 mil GP 5000S tubeless tire. Is that the best tire for those wheels, or is there something you would say is faster in 28 mil?
Oh, that tire really is kind of right at that sweet spot of it's almost the fastest tire going, but is also pretty functional in the real world, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that may be a little bit faster, but with a big increase in puncture risk. So it's pretty hard to beat. The thing I would look at there, and Continental is one of the brands, they use different molds and different preforms for each tire size. And so, this whole idea of, wider tires roll faster, that's true, but I think it's a much smaller marginal gain than most people think, because a lot of the data that built that theory came from companies in the old days, like, with tubulars, where you might have one tread mold and you're using that on 3 different widths of tire. And so what happens is, as the tire gets bigger, the percentage of sidewall gets bigger and the tire becomes faster. But if you were to, as Continental does, change the preform, the tire rubber kind of percentage-wise with tire width, then the gains become smaller. So I think, with Conti as an example, the 28 is, I think it's less than a watt faster than the 25, and the 30 is kind of similar. These aren't huge numbers. Whereas if you have like a handmade open tubular style, like the older, they're going away from this now, but like the older Vittoria tires, some of them you could actually see pretty big jumps there, because all of a sudden you had the tread from the 23 was also used on the 27, and you now just have a much smaller relative tread to the sidewall. But yeah, so on that wheel, I think that probably is a good tire. I would caliper it, for road racing, kind of my rule of 105 thing, you want the rim to be 105% of the tire width. The challenge we have anymore is that, different wheels have different inner widths. Some companies have different inner bead widths front to rear. But then also all of the new ETRTO standards, we still have not solved the tire width kind of to label consistency problem, right? And so some companies are saying this tire is 28 millimeters on a 17 millimeter bead width. And some are saying, well, this is on a 19 or a 21. And so essentially the number printed on the side of the tire is meaningless. And so you really want to get a set of calipers on it and just make sure that, for optimal road racing, particularly for time trialing, you really need that tire to be narrower than the rim. And that in most cases, with these fastest of the fast tires, that's going to be a faster overall combination than having a slightly wider tire that's wider than the rim.
I had Dylan Johnson on the podcast, Shantam, a couple of weeks ago, and he just loves his super wide gravel tires. Like, I'm rocking 44s on the gravel bike. I think he's rolling like 47s on the gravel bike. Reckons they're faster in almost every conditions.
Yeah, we actually just had Dylan in the wind tunnel, I don't know, a couple months ago, and one of the things we learned for gravel is that it's back kind of some ways back to the rule of 105. Once the tire is bigger than the rim, the rim is really just serving as more almost like as a spoke shortening device. The deep rims are a little faster because the spokes are shorter. And you're maybe controlling the flow and some of the shedding a little bit better. You almost can't see it. And so, we learned, and I think he did a video, and I think we've got a blog post up about it, but it was, every 5 millimeters was like a watt or two of aero loss. I mean, it was really fairly small. And so when you looked at it and geez, from a 35 millimeter to a 45 millimeter tire is just a couple watts of aerodynamic drag. But, you go do Chung method testing in the real world, and you find that that can be, as the road gets rougher, the advantage goes way towards the wider tire. So maybe it's a 2-watt disadvantage in aero, but it's a 10-watt advantage on a rough road surface. And so, yeah, I think a lot of what Dylan is doing and where he's going is kind of informed by a lot of the work that he's been doing with us and with Travis here and in our office. But yeah, I would say for gravel, and particularly rough gravel, wider is definitely better.
So if you like this video, you should definitely check out this video because I know you're going to love it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.